are saying.
All right. So I'd like to welcome Mel Rapozo onto our Facebook Live here at KITV. Wanted to talk to you about what's happening in Kauai. Obviously, you're a investigator with the prosecutor's office there. You're
Yes.
very active in the community as a former council member. Just overall, what's your sense? I know we talk about how successful Kauai has been in terms of keeping this outbreak or keeping this virus out. So tell us, what do you think can be credited to that?
Well, I think our mayor started the trend of like the lockdown trend. He started with the curfew, which he did get some criticism for. And in fact, a lot of people felt that the 9 to 5 curfew may have been too short. It should have been 24 hours. But now we look back and we really thankful that he did that. It not only set the tone that this was a dangerous virus, that in fact it warranted a curfew, but it was just knowing that this was just the start of what was to come. And he started with the curfew. He started with the stay at home well before the state did, and in fact became the model for the rest of the mayors. And so we're very thankful for that. Now in hindsight, obviously our numbers have been amazing, and the only thing we did different from the rest was we still had the visitors coming in. Everything was the same, but we had the curfew and we had the early stay at home. So I think that played a huge role in the success of our numbers.
Mm-hmm. And now you're reopening. You're the first one to really get these businesses opening, the beaches, the churches. How's that going? What's the mood like over there?
Well, I think there's a lot of people that have been asking for this to happen for quite a while. And there's a huge segment as well that are very apprehensive because they're so afraid. A lot of people are afraid of this virus. And, I thought, churches, I think as long as we practice the disciplines, the social distancing and the disinfection, all of that stuff, I think we're relatively safe. I was concerned about opening up the tourist attractions or the ATVs and the zip lining, because most of the local people right now, anyway, most of them aren't working. Many of them haven't received a check in 2 months or any kind of income. So that was my concern, that it may incite some of our visitors that are supposedly on quarantine to head out to those attractions. But, I trust our mayor. He has a solid team around him, and we just got to wait and see. One of our concerns here, as well as statewide, is what's happening at the airports, and how do we ensure that our visitors are quarantining, and that's a big concern for most everyone here on Kauai.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you what you guys are doing there, because every day we hear reports of visitors violating quarantine, social media, obviously helping us vet these people and get them out and reporting them to the police. But there's so many more that are still kind of slipping through the cracks. I know you're a former police officer, retired. So tell us, what do you think it really takes to enforce this?
Well, I gotta say, and I told General Hara, he was just on our Facebook Live a little while ago tonight, and I had to commend him because between our chief, Todd Raybuck, and the military, our National Guard people, the men and women that are here, Kauai is very, very aggressive in their checking. They check all of the residences, all of the hotels that these people are putting on the forms, and they have caught some of these people and arrested some of these people. But nonetheless, I mean, we're running into the problem where these folks are using local addresses, local residences and they're saying they're staying with family and friends, and those are the ones that are slipping through the cracks. And that has been our concern for a long time, and we've shared that with everyone that's been on our show, everyone in a leadership position, that we got to get a handle on the airports. I mean, we cannot let them leave the airport until we know for a fact that they have a legitimate address that's expecting them. We've had complaints here of police and National Guard, and they show up together. The police and the National Guard show up as a unit, and they've shown up at residences that have no idea who these people are, that have just, I guess, Googled addresses and put a fake address on the form, and they're either homeless or they're staying at B&Bs, or which are illegal. So those are going to continue until we can get a handle of them at the airport and not letting them leave until we know for a fact that they have a legitimate address that's actually accepting them for the duration of their stay.
Did he give you any clarity as to how well they are doing in terms of confirming them? Because last I spoke to him, he also said that they were going to have phones. Each person was going to verify on the spot and make sure that it was an active cell phone, an active contact. I don't know. Did he give any indication
Well,
as to that was happening?
yeah, well, that's happening. That, in fact, that was what was happening prior to the that one incident on Oahu where the first wild goose chase. Prior to that, and I watched the Senate COVID meetings, every one of them, and when they had the DOT and HTA on there, they were only checking the cell phone. So basically, they would check to make sure the cell phone rang, but that did absolutely nothing. As long as you're with your phone, you could be at the beach and answer the phone. But that has changed now, and that now they're actually confirming and verifying addresses. Not the general did say that we're about a week away from a new electronic tracking system that these people are gonna. I guess it's an app that they're gonna unveil relatively soon, and that may help. But it's the problem is, again, if you don't have the ability to track them down and catch them, then they're free, and that's what's happening. We're seeing that now, and they're posting their stuff on social media, and they're proud. And I saw Angela Keene at the Senate committee meeting a few days ago, and she said she's uncovered an underground network where people from the mainland can actually tap into and set everything up
Wow.
with the addresses and the phones, and having people confirm uh, addresses that are not accurate, and then setting them up with the tour or rental cars. So there is this problem that they need to figure out how we're gonna fix. But as
Wow.
tourism, as the numbers grow every day, and we're gonna see more. Right now, 300-400 a day, but it's soon gonna be 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000. Do we really have the capacity to track all of these people? And that's where the problems can start.
Well, on the flip side, so many of our businesses do rely on tourism, right? And we
Mhm.
hear a lot about these small, not just the small businesses, but like you said, the tour operators that uh, can't really reopen without any of these people coming in. Even inter-island, they can't, that's not enough to sustain them. So the other option is to perhaps get them tested before they arrive, right? We've been talking about maybe requiring screening on the mainland first before they come here, showing proof that they're negative. What do you think about that idea? Do you think that would fly?
Well, I think it will, and I think once we get that in place logistically, I think we'll see. It'll give the people anyway some level of comfort. But again, we got to realize that there is no 100% safe method unless you stick them in a quarantine hotel with guards watching the door so they don't leave, and that won't happen. I mean, I think the Attorney General made it very clear that that's not going to happen. So we got to realize that we can do so much, and we can only uh, do what we can, and there are going to be people that slip through. But the testing definitely, I wish we had started that a while back. And once we get that set up, I just don't know how logistically, it'd be no different than the Texas governor calling Governor Ige and said, hey, we want you guys to test every outgoing passenger before they leave. I'm not sure if we're going to get buy-in from the other states and the other countries that allow people to fly out. And so that's going to be a tough one that they're going to have to resolve. I'm not sure how they're going to do that
Yeah, and the
unless
other
we
thing
test
too.
them.
Yeah, the other thing too I was going to mention is, they're opening up Las Vegas June 4th. So, our people are going to want to go and, get out of the quarantine and then come back. But
Well,
as we've seen, returning residents are also bringing it in, exposure there. What's your thoughts on that?
well, Vegas is my favorite destination spot, and I I don't know how many people. I think that they're still going to have a lot of people. They won't be at the numbers that they were pre-COVID, but they're still going to have a lot of people going to Vegas. And I think, my purely non-scientific guess is that Vegas is going to open up, and Vegas is going to see some major spikes in cases, and then they're going to have to pull back. That's just what I think will happen, only because the numbers, the sheer numbers of visitors that they will get with no testing requirement. I think it's just the way it's going to be. The law of averages. You get that many people going into one area, they'll have plexiglass shields and they'll be disinfecting dice and chips, but you're still not gonna. It's not 100%. So one of the things when I talk about visitors coming in, I mean, I should say travelers, because the virus doesn't discriminate. So the local resident that goes to Vegas and comes back should be treated no differently than the visitor that's coming to Hawaii from Texas or New York or anywhere else. And that's going to be a problem. That's going to be annoying. The ninth island. There's a ton of people just waiting to go.
Yeah, I know. And I remember I spoke to General Hara before about this as well. And he said that if this were to happen, he has a plan in place that he can implement that would quarantine everyone in one facility. But I don't think that's going to fly with the prosecutor or at least the AG's office.
Hey,
I think
geez.
there was
I mean,
some
when we had
constitutional
Senate
issues
President,
there.
we had Senate President Kochi on our show one night, and he talked about they had a plan of either using one of the airport hotels, that one of those two hotels close to the airport in Honolulu, or using the UH dormitories, because obviously they're vacant. But again, that was pre-AG coming out and saying you cannot do that. So that won't happen. That would be the only way that you could totally isolate the visitor from the community, provided you had the guards, the National Guard people there watching every hallway and making sure nobody leaves. But that won't happen. So we got to figure out what's the next best thing. And as we saw last week with the passenger from Arkansas, he had a fever. He didn't even realize he had a fever. They tested him at the airport. He had a fever. They tested him. They sent him to his hotel, or actually to his house. He claimed he was returning. It was a returning resident, and he tested positive. They found out a couple of days later. Now, how many people did that guy come in contact with? How many people were on that plane with him when he came over? How many people were infected? We don't know. And so the testing wall is probably the best thing we can do right now, testing them before they get on a plane, knowing that the incubation period is 14 days. In fact, the Department of Health doctor here on Kauai, Dr. Berriman, she's extra cautious. She lived through a pandemic, and I can't remember where, but she worked in a country with a pandemic, and I can't remember which one. But she recommended 2 cycles of the incubation period, which is 28 days. That's why Kauai waited 28 days before they started to open up certain things, to be extra careful. But we obviously won't do that for visitors. But the 14-day quarantine, you could test negative prior to leaving your home in the mainland, and then eventually become contagious while you're here. So the pre-boarding test is not 100% either, but it's a hell of a lot better than what we got now.
Yeah. I mean, is there any kind of confidence that the public has in what the state is doing right now? I mean, what are you hearing over there? I know that there's confidence in the county and what you're doing locally, but overall, it just seems that there seems to be a lot of doubt in the contact tracing systems, the unemployment, obviously, just because of not a lot of people are getting their checks still. And it just seems like there's lack of confidence in what the government is doing. I don't know. Are you getting that same sense?
Oh, absolutely. I think for the most part, the level of confidence now, with how the state is handling this is very low. Then unemployment is a huge one. I mean, because that directly impacts the families and the ability to put food on the table. I mean, you tell when you see the food distribution lines is out of control, because people need food, and people aren't getting paid. So yeah, I think the level of confidence, and it's been almost 2 months now, or probably 2 months already, and we still haven't gotten that thing fixed. The contact tracing, I think, and this, you probably better than most, that it was never the state Department of Health's priority to test. Dr. Anderson was never, I mean, from day one, felt that testing was, and I remember this specifically, as like it was yesterday, where he said testing does nothing for the state of Hawaii. It's a snapshot in time. that we really got to focus on social distancing. And well, I agree with the social distancing, but I disagree that we shouldn't test. I mean, testing is critical. And if you follow this virus anywhere else in this world, there is not one jurisdiction that agrees with that. If we are going to open up the economy, which we need to, I mean, we need to open up this economy, but it has to happen with massive, widespread testing and contact tracing. It's irresponsible to do one without the other, and the Department of Health just never grasped that, and so the people here are very frustrated with that position that the Department of Health has taken.
Yeah, and we've seen that a lot of the private sector has had to make up for that, right? We've had to rely on private practitioners to run a lot of the clinics and testing events that we're seeing. But I guess going forward, as we continue to ramp up the reopening, what other efforts can be done to, I guess, instill the confidence back? Because if we're seeing that the mindset isn't going to change at that level, what more can be done?
Individual responsibility. I mean, that's what it is. And, I've been preaching this for 2 months now. It's regardless of what the state does or doesn't do, we all got to practice that individual responsibility. And as General Hara said, every morning when he takes his run and in the evening when he takes his walk, he sees the violators, locals, visitors congregating at the beaches, and that's what's going to cause a problem. So if we as the citizens of communities want to get through this, then we got to take some responsibility, and that is really by making sure that we wash our hands and we're not touching our faces, and we staying at home as often as much as you can, and practicing that social distancing. That's critical. Because it's not going to change. The contact tracing, I mean, they're looking to ramp that up, but it's the ability to trace these contacts effectively. I question the way the reporting is done. You saw today, we erased 5 cases off the books just like that, and I question that. I question, what are we doing? Were we testing them wrong in the beginning? Are we getting false positives, and now we're going back to and looking for false positives so we can lower our numbers? That's the impression I get, is that we're really trying to keep Hawaii as a safe place, or the perception that it's the safest place on earth. And the only way we can do that is with low numbers. And that's why I think the testing numbers, they don't want to test. That's I don't know what else. I can't imagine any other reason why we wouldn't want to do widespread testing. I mean, up until recently, you almost had to have the virus before they'd even test you. Your doctor wouldn't ask for a test unless you had all the symptoms.
Still, right? They still have to be symptomatic at this level. I know even
Yes.
antibodies, the insurance isn't covering the tests.
Yeah, exactly. And we know 40% of them are asymptomatic. So that's not a good formula. And we had Dr. Miskovich on our show several times already, and he was just on last week, and he talked about the importance of testing and the fact that he's gonna be rolling out antibody testing here on Kauai shortly, and they'll do it. They'll do it if you don't have insurance, or if you don't have the doctor's paper. It's $40, but I think a lot of people are gonna go get that test, because I think we had a lot more positives than those numbers show, only because we didn't test. We didn't test enough, and even on Kauai, we've had less than 2,000 tests since the beginning.
Mhm.
And
Mel,
population
I'm
of
going to ask
75,000.
you on the flip side. Okay, so it seems like we are kind of on the same vein here in terms of the thinking. But what about the others that say that this is too much, this is too extreme, right? We've been closed for too long, we're being too conservative, right? What do you say to people like that who are calling on fully reopening? This has been contained, the curve is flat. What do you say to them?
No, my partner Charlie, who's a co-host on my show, he lost his brother in New York City to COVID early on, and I tell those people, go talk to Charlie, talk to that family of those people, talk to all the families of the people that died, or maybe not died, but went through 6 or 7 weeks on a ventilator, and I agree that by this point in time, we should have had more open businesses, but we should have had a better handle of the arrivals a month ago. So I agree that we need to open this economy shortly, because you see it, Licky Drive-In. Businesses here are not going to reopen. They couldn't absorb the period. What frustrates me though is those people that are protesting every Friday at the county building, and they
You just
purposely
had one
not
today.
every Friday. It's every Friday.
Every Friday. Okay.
Every Friday. And they purposely go there without their masks. They purposely violate the social distancing, and they want everything open. And that bothers me, because whatever your position is and whatever you believe your rights are, when you're exercising your rights are putting other people in danger, then that's where the line has to be drawn. And while I empathize with them, and I to a certain point I agree that we should be opening more, we cannot open until we can ensure the safety of our kupuna and our the people that have immune issues that are vulnerable to this virus. And and it's real. It's real, and people got to understand that. And the fact that the state isn't moving as quick as it should be, in my opinion, doesn't negate the fact that the threat is still here. And as more visitors come in, we see it rising every day. It's going to be up at 1,000 shortly, and then it's going to be 2,000. Once the spike hits, once the cluster hits a community like Kauai, such a small community, it's too late. It's very hard to unwind that, and you got to shut everything back down again, and you start back from square one. And that's what these people need to think about: is we can suffer and sacrifice for a little longer to have the freedoms open up, and at a permanent rate. And that's what I would tell those people. But don't underestimate or minimize the threat of this virus, because it is real, and we're seeing the spikes in other places in the country.
Yeah, definitely a good reminder for all of us as we continue to ramp up our reopening efforts, and hopefully using that money that we're getting from the federal government to boost up our testing and our contact tracing. Sounds like. Final thoughts, Mel?
Well, now is not the time to be playing around with the numbers. I think, if you want to you got to get an accurate snapshot of where we're at. And that means being honest with the people, being transparent with the people. See, right now, what the state's bigger problem right now is gaining the confidence back from the constituents, from the people. And you're not going to get that by keeping information from them. Cam 4 housing, that cluster was hell. It was the media. I don't know, was that you? I can't remember who it was now, but it was the media that asked the question, that pried it out of the state at that press conference. They just gotta be transparent, good or bad. They gotta be honest with the people, and then they gotta let the people gonna be more. They'll be more subject to receiving this information and understanding, if they don't believe that they're being lied to. And I think that's kind of what the people are feeling right now. They just don't trust them. The integrity, I think, has been damaged, and they need to focus on that as well as dealing with this virus. So that's a tough challenge for the state.
Yeah, tough call. But thank you for you to continue informing and educating with your Facebook show and everything. It's good to have people all across the islands spreading the information that we need to stay safe and protect our communities. So appreciate you, Mel Rapozo.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time. And I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Yes. Aloha. Have a great day.
Aloha.
Great night.
Stay safe.